Chapter 6 Too Cool for School, Part 2. Make it safe. Kyle feels that boys need lots of encouragement and validation. Learning needs to happen in an environment of intellectual safety, where they are not afraid to sound dumb or, for that matter, too smart. That's why he lives by the motto, students need to know how much you care before they care how much you know. Kinlone and Thompson clearly agree. Boys need to feel full acceptance. When they feel that their developmental skills and behavior are normal and that others perceive them that way, they engage more meaningfully in the learning experience. As a parent, it's your job to encourage learning and mental curiosity. This means not only tolerating some of your son's strident opinions, but also being supportive if he asks you to, say, edit a paper. It is fine to help him think through his ideas, not yours, but make sure the final version reflects his voice. If he does let you help, make sure nothing you do causes your son shame. Likewise, if you get the sense he is being shamed by a teacher, take a stand. I have learned from personal experience that some well-meaning teachers don't realize when they are using shame to shape their students' behavior. A third-grade teacher tried to curb my child's fidgets by turning the desk around. She didn't recognize the embarrassment this caused until we pointed it out and asked her to turn the desk back forward. Make it relevant. More than girls, boys have trouble taking schoolwork seriously unless they see its relevance. Daniel H. Pink, author of Drive, The Surprising Truth About What Motivates Us, called relevance the fourth R. I could not agree more. Boys ask me all the time, why do I have to learn algebra, history, English, etc., if I will never use it? Believe me, I've searched far and wide for an answer that satisfies these male teenage skeptics, but I've yet to find anything truly persuasive. Here are a few responses I've tried. You may not need algebra, but that is not the point. It teaches logic, error detection, and persistence. I don't know why you have to learn it, but I do know that every school in the entire world offers this subject, so someone must feel it is necessary. The college you want to get into does not care if you did not like your teacher, or felt you did not need to read Shakespeare. Part of being successful is being able to do things you do not want to do. The success of a democracy depends on an educated citizenry. While you might not ever use biology, I want the guy in the voting booth next to me to have enough general knowledge to be able to make an informed decision. I felt the same way about math in high school. The joke was on me, however, when I ran a hospital department and had to make a budget. The brain is plastic, meaning that it changes as you learn and grow. So when you study algebra, not only are the algebra nerve cells aglow, but chemical reactions stimulate nearby pathways that have nothing to do with algebra. So it becomes easier to learn the dates of major Civil War battles or to memorize elements of the periodic tables. Your adolescent brain is more plastic now than it will ever be, and it is uniquely wired to learn new things. So cram as much useless information you can in there now, because it's a use it or lose it proposition. By the time you reach the ripe old age of 25, your brain will seal up the things you have already learned, and it will be harder to get new things to stick. I hope you enjoy more success with the above responses than I have. In case you strike out as well, I posed the problem to a few teachers, including Kai Reddy. Here's what he had to say. I wholeheartedly agree with students when they tell me the content they are learning has no relevance. The post-industrial revolution model did work and had relevance, but so much of school today is now outdated. You are this age and will go to this grade and take this order of classes. Things have changed, but the structures around school have not. So I agree with kids. There are a bunch of reasons it will be relevant. Not the content itself, but the process, the logic, the work ethic. David Murray, a high school math teacher in California, holds a similar opinion. I know that I was a punk when I was a student, so I am good at putting myself in their shoes. I try to be real with them. So when they say they will never use math, I tell them, that's true. Chances are no one in this room is going to become a mathematician. 99% of you will not need Algebra 2 beyond this class. However, I would be negligent if I did not teach it to you. That is because 99% of you will need to think logically and have a number sense. In the real world, you will need to solve problems by rationalizing things quantitatively. Many of you will need to know how to amortize a student loan or mortgage, and 100% of you will need to balance a checkbook. David goes on to make an analogy to coaching sports. I get that there are things my students don't care about, and that their minds are miles away. But I also coach basketball and football, and I can promise you none of them are going pro. Coaching is about teaching life lessons beyond the court, and the same is true with my math class. Here's a heartening conversation I had with a 15-year-old patient who narrowly escaped failing his freshman year. Anthony, I hate to write. I am never going to need to learn how to write. Why do I have to take English? Dr. Price, well, that is interesting. What subjects do you think a ninth grader should take? Anthony, well, math, maybe science. Dr. Price, Spanish? Anthony, definitely not Spanish. When would I ever use that? Dr. Price, let me tell you something. In some countries, at around 6th grade, all the children take a test that determines who goes to college and who does not. The ones who pass the test take classes that prepare them for university. The others spend their high school years learning a trade or some other basic skills. So if you lived, let's say, in England, you might never have to take some of these subjects. How does that sound? Anthony, I'm not sure. Dr. Price, well, let's pretend you have to decide right now what you want to be when you grow up, and you can only take the classes relevant to that field. Anthony, I have no idea what I want to be. Maybe go into business like my dad. So I guess I would take math. Dr. Price, just math? Anything else? Anthony, I suppose a businessman has to know how to write a proposal or a letter, so I guess I should stick with English class. At the end of the day, it is going to be up to you to talk to your son about what he is learning and to find the relevance in it. The only way to do this is to find out as much as you can about what he is learning. Instead of relying on, how was your day? Ask him what he learned. Pick one subject and then let him teach you a little about it. You might learn something new about the French Revolution. Ask how he relates to the character in a novel, or how a history lesson can apply to current events. You can offer your own thoughts, and you may even want to read, or reread, some of the books he is assigned. I loved The Great Gatsby and Lord of the Flies, more as an adult than when I was in high school. Ultimately, the goal is to promote intellectual curiosity, to nurture intellectual curiosity in your child. You have to nurture it in yourself. Bring up things at the dinner table that you wonder about. Ask your kids what is happening in the world. When my kids were younger, I started every Friday night dinner by asking them, what new happened in the world this week? And read. Reading is, perhaps, the most important thing you can do to model the value of learning. Make reading cool. Not every boy is lucky enough to have a teacher like Kyle Vasconcelos, Kai Reddy, or David Murray. One thing you can do to make a big difference, however, is to portray reading as a cool activity for boys and men. Bruce Peary, a high school English teacher in Mississauga, Ontario, points out, children in elementary and middle school identify the practice of reading with women. It is the mothers who read books and magazines. Peary cares so deeply about boys and reading that he wrote a book about it. Bruce knows that for most boys who have difficulty expressing their feelings, fiction is a turnoff. He hopes one day soon to see the reading and writing gender gap shrink, as did the math and science gap. Only this time, it is the boys who need to catch up. For this to happen, Bruce proposes a simple change in how novels are presented. Specifically, rather than having students first express emotional reactions to fictional works in the classroom, he advocates that teachers start a literature lesson by analyzing a novel's historical context, plot, and themes. Peary feels that boys find writing challenging because the process is too ambiguous. Writing requires a heavy dose of uncertainty tolerance that makes them feel temporarily inadequate, weak, and not in control. Boys prefer activities that are highly structured and have definite rules. Peary suggests that rather than assertiveness training, boys need tentativeness training. I'll explain how this is done in Chapter 12. Until then, if you're a father and you are not currently engaged in a book, pick one up. Boys rarely see men read anything more than the sports or business page. If your son is in high school, read a book that he might enjoy. Make sure he sees you reading it. Tell him a little about it, and then suggest he give it a go. If your son is a bit younger, start a father-son book group. I'll bet you'd be embarrassed to ask friends to join, but that is the whole point, isn't it? You can start by saying, "We are really trying to encourage Jimmy to put down his video game controller and pick up a book." You might be surprised at the positive response you'll get. Read books made into movies and compare the film version with the real thing. Include some non-reading activities like a ball game or camping trip, or plan an outing that's related to one of the books you read. At the end of this chapter, there's a list of books your son might find appealing. You can also always check with the librarian. They're experts in what kids like to read. Help him connect to something outside of school. If your son is really turned off by school, he may need help finding something unrelated that piques his interest. I have worked with enough opt-outs to form a new category, Mr. Professional. These boys have turned their hobbies into small businesses. One 8th grader took pictures of mountain bikers and snowboarders at local competitions and sold them on the internet. He became a fixture at the local ski mountain, even earning a free season pass. The fallout from his business venture was a constant tug-of-war with his parents because he neglected his homework. However, I tend to agree with this kind of entrepreneurial opt-out. In this case, I would reassure you that many well-known and successful people paid more attention to nurturing an early passion than they did to schoolwork. David Karp, founder of Tumblr, is a recent example. He started learning HTML at 11, dropped out of high school at 15 so he could focus on computer programming, and by age 27 was worth $200 million. Your son may not be so fortunate in pursuing his ambition, and he still needs to be encouraged to do well in school. But do not underestimate the value of a hobby. Get him moving. There is no question that boys need to be physical and that exercise helps improve their mood and focus. Richard Love, author of Last Child in the Woods, coined the term nature deficit disorder to capture how modern society has turned its back on the great outdoors. British researchers, according to Love, found that the average 8-year-old could better identify Pokemon characters than the names of common trees. However, if your son is an inside kid, I'm hesitant to encourage you to push him out of the house. My aim is to steer you away from power struggles, not into new ones. I have seen few parents succeed in getting their reluctant sons to exercise or work out. If at all possible, though, stop driving him to school. Get him to walk or ride his bike. Lead by example. Ultimately, strong schools build strong boys. They also build strong girls. Some child experts, such as Dr. Leonard Sachs, feel passionately that same-sex education benefits both boys and girls. Kai Reddy, on the other hand, suggests that going to school with girls actually helps boys. I tend to agree with Kai. One study found that with boys, it's not peers that make a difference, but rather a male teacher. No doubt, we need more male teachers at the middle school and high school levels. While the desk and rows, one-size-fits-all approach to learning may not be tailored specifically to the needs of boys, it does seem to be the most efficient way to educate the populace, which is exactly the point of compulsory education. However, there are some troubling trends in public education that have more to do with politics than pedagogy, and which are diverting needed resources away from public schools and making it harder for teachers to do their jobs. My views on improving education for our kids. Reduce class size. Easier said than done, but this will have the biggest single impact on the quality of education in our schools. Eliminate mandated standardized testing. Rather than ensure that no child be left behind, these instruments are killing innovation as teachers are forced to teach the test. Check out fairtest.org. Start classes later in the day. Whoever it was that thought a 7:30 a.m. start and 10 a.m. lunch period was good for adolescents has never met a teenager. Check out startschoollater.net. Play sports in the morning. One reason classes begin early in high school is so that students who need to watch younger siblings after school can get home in time. Some districts have solved this problem by holding sports practice before school. This change has an added benefit. Exercise improves attention. It is also a surefire way to build movement into a boys' school day. Lighten the homework load. In an effort to raise the international rank of American schools, the homework burden has dramatically increased. However, there is little rhyme or reason to this, other than creating unneeded stress and pressure. Check out racetonowhere.com. Suggested reading for teens. The rest of the chapter is just a bunch of books and novels that are recommended for kids to read. I hope you enjoyed this chapter, and I'll see you in the next one.